for being here. All right, we are recording this webinar. My name is Matt Denninger. I'm the Chief Strategy and Research Officer at DESE, and here to talk to you today about the ESSER data collection for 2022. This is the FY21 annual report that the U.S. Department of Education is collecting. I'm joined this morning by two wonderful colleagues, the director of our federal grants group here at DESE, Simone Lynch, and a newcomer to our group, Desi Kurova, who took over for Beth O'Connell a couple of months ago, and who's been helping us with this data collection project. Let's see here. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping items just before we begin. The slides are going to be emailed later this week to anyone who registered, so whether you're here or not. To preserve bandwidth, we've done this in a webinar format, and so in that webinar format, we really like to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. If you have questions along the way, please feel free. We like the Q&A feature as opposed to the chat feature because it enables us to organize the questions and answer them in a more orderly manner. So please use that feature if you've got a question for us. All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. The ESSER data collection, where we've been. I'm going to give you a little bit of context to sort of just ground us in where we've been. Then talk about where we are now as we're moving into this year 2 collection. I will then do a walkthrough of the collection tool itself. And then we will have some time at the end for Q&A, and we'll point you to some helpful resources. So let's get started on some context. Where have we been? Last year, last July, districts across Massachusetts submitted data on ESSER I spending. And it was between, it was really just the first 6 months of the pandemic that the feds were collecting data on, right? It was from March 13th, 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, through September 30th of 2020, which was the end of the federal fiscal year, because the federal government was collecting this information on federal fiscal years. Last July, we got 100% participation from all of our districts, which is great. It's exactly what the feds were looking for. And in terms of the length, it was a manageable. I know it was a it was a project for sure, but it was 11 pages of questions. So that was last July. And it enabled us to take a look at spending over those first 6 months, and in the aggregate, be able to report interesting and useful data, such as probably to no one's surprise, a lot of the money in the first 6 months went to technology. We were all shut down. We were spending money on Chromebooks and internet connections, and also a large portion of money on sanitization, health safety protocols, and other kinds of expenditures. I will also say that there is a lot of demand out there for information on how ESSER funds are being spent. The state government, the Administration and Finance Group, publishes an online dashboard that shows ESSER funds, how much districts got, what the spend down rates are, et cetera. You see the allocated and claimed selections on the right there. And I would say on a weekly basis, almost daily, almost every other day, we get questions from the media about how districts are spending money, and I'm sure you're getting some of those inquiries and questions as well. So there's a lot of interest in in data, and especially in the ESSER fund data. So that was year one of the collection. Here we are moving into year two. So the feds are requiring the second annual ESSER data collection for all states and districts that receive ESSER's 1, 2, and 3 funding. We are going to open up this collection the Monday after April vacation, and we're going to close the collection about a month later on Friday, May 20th. But not to worry, we are going to send you the tool in Microsoft Word version so that, if you want to get started now on getting some of this information together over the next couple of weeks, you'll have that opportunity. A little bit of context for how we got to this year two form. Actually, when you were all filling out the year one, which is really the first 6 months of spending, last July, USAID, the new administration, released a new draft data collection tool for this year. And rather than those 11 pages of questions, it was 33 pages of questions. They also had a public comment period because I put these out for public comment. We worked with some stakeholders across the state to make and actually with some partners down in Washington, D.C., our friends at CCSSO, the Council of Chief State School Officers, to issue some public comment because one, we thought that the 33 pages, it was too much. It was a lot, and basically some of the data we know that districts would have a very difficult time collecting. And two, among other things, they're collecting this information on federal fiscal year, and our argument was that that's not real easy for our districts to do. If we could get to a state fiscal year cadence, that would be much, much easier. Otherwise, we're going across our state fiscal years for this data collection. So the feds took that that public comment into account, and then in October they released a revised draft that was even longer. They also had a public comment period then, and there was more public comment made. They finally released a final draft that was 39 pages long. However, I do have some good news for you on those 39 pages that I'll get to on the next slide. All this to say that just in last month, they were still making some minor tweaks to the tool. But we have to get the data collection into them later this spring. So we've got to open the data collection in this month, right? So now the good news on those 39 pages. That 39-page tool allows for a couple of things. It allows for certain questions to actually be optional this year. And so some of them they're just calling a preview for possible inclusion in future years. So anything that was optional or sort of a preview for future years, we are not going to require that you answer those questions. We're not even going to put them into the tool. If you're interested, by all means, reach out to us about what might be in a future data collection. But we really want to just focus on what they're going to require this year. The second thing is, and it isn't on here, but they did agree to go to the state fiscal year from federal fiscal year. So they are transitioning this year to our state fiscal year, July 1 to June 30, which I think is going to make things easier. Lastly, anything that you've already given to DESE, so they asked for some programmatic information to SIMS, something that we can use SIMs for or EPIMs for to report out on certain questions related to enrollment or staffing. We're not going to ask you for that data again. We will make those calculations based on your data submissions from October 1, and we will use that. We don't want to duplicate efforts. So really proud of the team, DESE, Simone, and others who basically took this 39-page survey, whittled it down to about 14 pages that you'll have to work with. Now, that is for the ESSER I. There are a couple of, some districts spent some ESSER II funds during this time period, and we'll get to that. So, as I said, US Ed heard the public comment. We're transitioning to state fiscal years. So this data collection is going to be based on activities administered between the following FY21 dates. Remember, for ESSER I, you've already reported up to September 30th of 2020. So we're going to start with October 1st of 2020 and go through the end of the state fiscal year, June 30th of 2021. So that's for ESSER I. For ESSER II, this is sort of a mix because some districts applied for ESSER II and started spending ESSER II in FY21. And some districts applied for ESSER II and started spending ESSER II in FY22. If you waited for FY22, then you don't have to do the ESSER II collection form because you didn't have any spending on ESSER II in FY21. So only if you've spent again during the FY21 range on ESSER II would you have to report out on that. So there are actually going to be 4 tools depending on, and you will get a confirmation of which of these tools you're going to have to fill out based on what grants you've got. So basically all the districts got the Fund Code 113 ESSER I, and basically all the districts had some spending in FY21. So, and that's obviously the main allocation that went to all districts. It's also going to apply to those districts. So there will be separate forms for the summer learning grant if you receive Fund Code 114 and Fund Code 432. Those forms will actually be a little bit shorter. And the reason is because the state got some ESSER money along with the federal funds that came through. And the state broke down that ESSER money into these smaller grants that went out to you, and the feds still need to collect data on that. So that's why these smaller grants, the summer learning grant and the FAFSA grant, if you receive that money and again spent on activities during that FY21 period, you would have to fill out those data collection tool forms as well. And I just talked about ESSER II. That is going to apply to those districts that spent money during the FY21 period. As I said, we're going to put together a spreadsheet. We'll have all the districts and which of these tools you will need to fill out, just so that everyone's clear on that. The data collection is going to ask both spending questions and some programmatic info. One of the questions that we've got about spending is, what do we mean by spending? So expenditure means the actual spending of money and outlay, charges made by a non-federal entity to a project or program to which a federal will be received. So you are a non-federal entity. We are a non-federal entity. So any spending, whether you use a cash or accrual basis, just be consistent with that. And we don't mean encumbrance. We mean actual spending. So the actual submission that I'm going to walk through in just a second here will be through our Alchemer platform. It's basically an online survey tool that spent a lot of time working with the data collection surveys, a lot of and then there will be some password access to the data collection forms, and that password will be your 4-digit district code. And we do this to make sure that you are filling out the right district's data. We have had instances in the past where if we just do like a drop down, select your district, you hit the little wheel on your mouse, and then you don't realize that Amherst is just submitted the form for Amesbury, and no one wants that. So we're gonna make sure that there are no errant clicks with this password format. It will allow for multiple people in the district to use the link and the password. I know that many districts need multiple eyes on this. I think that the way it has to work is that the surveys have to be completed in order. You can't skip around on your first pass through, but I think that once you're basically at the end, you actually can go back and change questions and review the answers that you've made. All right. Simone, DESE, how we doing? We ready for the walk through the collection tools?
Yes, we are.
All right, great. I'm going to stop share here, and then I'm going to reshare. Got switch screens. 7. All right. I imagine folks can see the ESSER form here.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, great. Okay, thank you. All right, so this is what the year 2 ESSER I recipient data collection form will look like. We go in here and enter your district's 4-digit code. I'm going to enter a test code. All right, we are. It'll ask your name, email address, a PDF copy of your completed submission will be sent to whatever email address you put in there. It'll ask you if you're part of the Schedule A, if you're the lead district for the Schedule A. Most districts are going to say no to that, but there are a few Schedule A's across the Commonwealth. Next. Then it's going to ask you, this is where we're talking about spending. Okay, so the total amount expended by particular activities. This first activity is physical health and safety. And again, we're going to try to remind you as many times as possible. You'll see like notes here that are like, remember only during October 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021 reporting period. So, we spent $12 on personnel salaries, and then, fill out the rest here. And then at the end, it's going to ask for, make sure that this total adds all these up. Then on to the next activity, right? It'll ask about meeting students' academic, social, emotional, and other needs. So it's a pretty broad category, though it excludes mental health supports. And again, based on these categories, personnel, professional, contracts, supplies, property, etc. Generally, we're going to actually spend $13 on this one, all the way down. The next activity is mental health supports, again, by all of those categories, $15.59 for them. And then operational continuity and other allowed uses. And we hit next. So that is the spending data, the expenditure data that they're going to be asking for. This next page, they're asking for planned uses of remaining ESSER I funds. So you have to do a little bit of time travel for this one. Transport yourself back, get in the DeLorean, and go back to July 1st of 2021 and say, okay, as of July 1st of 2021, how many ESSER I funds, or how much ESSER I is remaining then? And it asks you again, as of July 1st of 2021, what were the percentages of remaining funds that were planned in these particular areas? And these areas are the exact same that you just filled out for expenditures, right? So it's physical health and safety, academic, social, emotional, and other needs, mental health, operational continuity, and then there's sort of that other catch-all. Oh yes, I have to actually, these are required questions, so it's going to have me make sure that these are all okay. See, build these checks into this. This is good. Okay, the next page is then going to ask about basically, if this is more the programmatic page, where it's going to ask you, if you received any of the ESSER awards, ESSER I, ESSER II, any of those smaller fund codes during the October 1 to June 30th period, what kinds of things did you do? For these, they're not asking for like how much did you spend, they're just saying, did you do these things? So did the district expend ESSER funds on any of the following activities? So promoting vaccination, physical distancing, ventilation, contact tracing, blah, 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 blah. So these are really just check marks. Did the district use ESSER funds to provide home internet access? So I'm gonna check a few of these because I know it's gonna tell me that I need to. Did we? Yes, sure. Yes, we did. And then it pops up, okay, so what kinds of home internet services were provided by the districts? We provided hotspots. This next one, 11, asks, did the district seek to re-engage students with poor attendance or participation again during the October 1 to June 30th timeframe? And actually, the little note here is that the feds want this regardless of whether you spent ESSER funds on these activities. They just want to know, as a district, did you do this? Yes, we did. And we did outreach to families. And we partnered with some CBOs. The next question is then asking, okay, did you use ESSER funds to support any of the following positions? And it's asking for the number of positions that you supported. It's not asking for FTEs, it's asking for positions. So we're looking for whole numbers here, and so we if we had 130 special educators across the district, and even a portion of the ESSER funds went to pay for, say, their benefits or a stipend for all of them, that would be all 130 were somewhat, even if they were somewhat supported by ESSER, you would put the whole number in there. And we hired paraprofessionals, full salaries, using ESSER funds, et cetera. Question 13 asks about whether or not you allocated some portion of ESSER funds down to schools. Many districts have this kind of thing where they might have a weighted student funding formula where that the schools get X amount of dollars and apply the ESSER funds that way as well. And so if you did that kind of thing, it's again a yes, no, and how did you do it? Based on these two methods. And that is it. Then you just have to certify that you are submitting this with the on behalf of the superintendent, that the information is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge. You submit to us. The way it will work, let's see if this will work. Yay. Okay, and then I'm gonna see in my email box. It usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes for this to show up in your email. And if you don't receive a PDF copy, it could be a couple of things. One, it could be that you just mistyped your email address in that first page of the form. It also could be that there was a problem with Alchemer and it misfired. And if you have an issue, just email us and we'll find it for you. So I'm going to stop there. Stop sharing. I'm going to go back. PowerPoint. So we just did a walkthrough of the collection tools. Before we get to questions and answers, just a note about future data collection requirements, and just to, again, put this into a broader context here. Where you see the arrows here, this is ESSER I, ESSER II, and our ESSER III. Where you see the arrows is what we're doing this year. This is the year 2 annual report. We're transitioning to state fiscal years, hooray. But we've got several more years of this, because we will be doing this data collection on an annual basis until all funds are liquidated. Now, obviously, ESSER I will be liquidated probably at some point next year, and then it'll just be ESSER II and ESSER III. But there is some pressure on the feds to certainly extend timelines. We don't have anything in definite yet. All we know is that there's a lot of cry from districts to say, it would be great to have more time to spend these funds. And the feds have some tools in their toolbox, but some they don't have. Some require acts of Congress. So it could be that the feds extend the liquidation period, but not another period. We'll see. But I think we are doing. I think what's very clear is that we're going to be doing this on an annual basis until all the funds have been liquidated. A couple of things that you can expect from us later this week. All of the registrants will receive a nice list of the districts, which collections you need to complete and which you don't. I'm going to send Microsoft Word versions of each of the data collection surveys so that you can start work on them, or at least take a look at them and say, okay, these are the ones that will be pretty easy for us to answer, and these are the ones that we might need to pull in someone else to answer these. We will do this. We'll send this PowerPoint. We're going to try to use some of the questions we got in the webinar yesterday and in today's webinar to publish a quick FAQ. We'll answer as many of the questions as we confidently and honestly can. And so that's later this week. As soon as possible, we're going to have these resources and more posted to our ESSER data collection website. And I'll give you a quick preview of that. Again, on Monday, April 25th, DESE will open up the collection, send the links to the districts along with some instructions. Here is, because I mentioned it, here is the website, the ESSER data collection website. It is on our federal grant programs website in the federal coronavirus relief program section. You can get there by navigating there or Googling there or searching the DESE website to get there. Also, because you'll have this PowerPoint, you'll be able to click into this